More on those headline stories throughout the day right here on 405. But let's bring you this discussion now. Police say since last year, they've recorded over 15,000 cases of kidnapping. Now, this is an incredible increase from the over 4,000 cases compared to those recorded a decade ago. So that was for the 2013-14 year. The motives range from ransom demands to human trafficking and extortion. Let's unpack the story further. Lizette Lancaster is from Crime and Justice Information Hub. She's the manager of that hub, at the Institute for Security Studies. Lizette, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. That's a shocking increase, isn't it? Almost threefold, if not more.
Yes, we are seeing that over a decade, this means there was an increase of 256%. So we are heading towards a 300% increase if the quarterly statistics are anything to go by. We know that we are now heading towards about 50 kidnappings on average a day in this country.
So, Lizette, what do you make of that? I suppose on the one hand, what it points to is that there's an environment that is enabling these kidnappings to flourish. What is that environment?
It's a mix and complicated bag, but what we have seen is an increase in violent crime in general, driven by interpersonal violence, but also group violence. So we have seen an increase in organized crime syndicates. We have seen an increase in conflict between these groups. Often, you know, the Zama groups in Gauteng are fighting with one another. The gang violence in the Eastern and Western Cape seem to be out of control, especially now with some of the head kingpins of these gangs being before court in places like Cape Town. And these groups are moving into extortion rackets, robberies such as cash and transits, and also the extortion game. So we know many of these organized groups in the Eastern Cape and Western Cape, for instance, perpetrate kidnappings in their communities of, say, foreign-born shop owners, dealing with cash and cash businesses. So we see this drug dealer groups or illicit drug groups intersect with robbery groups, intersect with transnational organized crime groups to drive up kidnappings. But we also have to understand that most of these kidnappings are not the result of high-value, wealthy people that are kidnapped for ransom. They are the extortions, as I've pointed out. But most of these are perpetrated, the kidnappings take place during carjackings and robberies of home robberies, business robberies, and street robberies that people are snatched from the streets or from their driveways or from their places of business.
So, Lizette, I imagine, and police have said that they're making some progress in dealing with the increasing number of kidnappings in the country. But given the fact, just what you've described, these overlapping issues, it's not like we can say the kidnappings are due to this reason and that it's just for ransom. There are so many other overlapping issues that must surely make the work of police that much harder, exponentially harder.
Exactly. It's overwhelming. We have seen some successes, and the police, National Police Commissioner said that they've arrested over 250 kidnapping perpetrators in the past 2 years. The problem is that often these task teams that the police have focusing on the kidnapping for ransom or the kidnapping with business people do an incredibly good job. You know, these people are highly trained, highly skilled police members that work under very difficult circumstances and work with the intelligence that they do have. And we've seen these huge successes. The problem is they're up against now probably around 17,000 of such kidnappings happening, as I point out, you know, over 50 a day. So it's hard for them to focus on all the kidnappings we see. And that is the problem.
And these are not people who wake up one morning and decide to carry out a kidnapping for ransom or whatever the reason might be. These are people who do this for a living.
Exactly. These are highly trained, often very sophisticated criminals that have probably done quite a number of other types of crimes, such as robberies, cash and transits, or the like, and have realized that kidnappings might be a lucrative, lower risk type of endeavor. You are looking here at people that are just, going about their business in our streets and at their businesses or at their homes. They are unarmed, so you require less people to perpetrate a kidnapping than you would one of the more sophisticated armed robberies, for instance. So yes, these are highly skilled and it's often very well planned. People are watched. Sometimes they are inside info. And these people plan it very well, days in advance.
Yeah. I mean, part of the work that you do, obviously you're unpacking the trends of kidnapping in the country, but is there some sort of advice that can be given? Where does one even begin to give someone, or just the general public, advice insofar as lowering your own risk to become a victim of this?
So obviously the public's risk of becoming a victim of kidnapping for ransom is not as high as the public's risk of becoming a victim of a carjacking or a robbery in broad daylight in our streets. Right. And this is where we need to look at. It's hard to figure out what to do, and your risk of a kidnapping, but your risk of being the victim of a robbery is far higher. And this is where we need to look at being aware of your surroundings, making sure that, you don't stay idly in your car, that your car's not parked for a long period of time in a certain spot, that you do try and change up your day routine, and that you do not tell many people if you come into cash, that you minimize the amount of money that is easily accessible in your banking apps or on your bank cards, because that's this express kidnappings that do take place, where people are kept often overnight to withdraw from their banks through ATMs or through their banking apps, for instance. And to make sure that you are just aware of your surroundings when you do go, everything from walking to jogging to taking public transport, and to make sure that you report these cases, if they do happen, unfortunately, to you, as quickly as possible, and to make sure that family members always know where you're at. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. Of course, we just hope and pray that the police are having these successes as they are having, but that they also look further than to the normal robbery syndicates, because we know that the impact of these syndicates are quite huge. And if we can remove these kingpins and the masterminds, we can make a huge dent in the number of robberies and kidnappings for ransom that are out there.
Yeah, certainly.